Hello. Thanks to Basic Space for inviting us as part of their Basic Talks series and for the Hugh Gallery for hosting. My name is Leah Corbett and I am the co-founder of Muine Bheag Arts, and I'm joined by Mark Buckridge, who is the other co-founder. We set up the organisation together in 2020 in the town of Muine Bheag in Carlow. We're an artist-run organisation and we host a programme of exhibitions, workshops and events in the public realm. Our aim is to promote contemporary art outside of the city context, to collaborate with the local community and to support emerging and established artists by commissioning new works of art. So we're going to chat briefly about how and why we set up the organisation and give an overview of our programmes to date. But first, Mark is going to give a little bit of context about Muine Bheag, the town.
Hi, I'm Mark. Muine Bheag, which is the Irish for Bagenalstown, is my hometown, and I've a strong connection to the place, having grown up here. When we were initially thinking about starting Muine Bheag Arts, I was interested in working with the community I grew up in. We wanted to work on something long-term, where we could work at a slower pace and really become part of the town. And that's how the project came to be located here. Muine Bheag is a small town located along the River Barrow in County Carlow, and there's a strong sense of community in the area, and I think people are proud of coming from here. We have active groups and organisations like the GA Club Bagenalstown Gaels and the Bagenalstown Improvement Group. We also have great life along the river, as we have an outdoor swimming pool and an active swimming club. There's also lovely walks and wildlife, which is looked after by the local biodiversity group. So another interesting thing about Bagenalstown is that it became the first town in Ireland to have dual language street signs, which happened in 1911, which are still in use today. We are both very interested in the Irish language, as we both went to Gael schools, and we tried to bring some of that into our PR and communications, which are in Irish and English, to acknowledge this duality. So just to briefly explain why we started the organisation and a bit more about our backgrounds and what led us to this point. I suppose we both went to art college and have experiences as artists and collaborating with our peers, working on shows in galleries and taking part in DIY initiatives. We found the communities we made, I think, very valuable and wanted to continue to create that within our work. For myself, I have experience of releasing records, forming bands, exhibiting artworks and collaborating with people to realise projects. And I went away to study an MFA at the Sandberg Institute in Amsterdam for 2 years. And this experience of being away and being surrounded by a different community in a new place, and having conversations with new people, I found very inspiring. And this idea of being away allowed me to think more, I think, about home. And I think there's something very special about being able to come back to the place where I grew up after being away for some time. And I think it's very grounding, but also it seems very meaningful to me. So we were excited to start something outside of the White Cube context, and within the organisation we work very much in public space, and this idea of working in public space is something that both interested myself and Leah.
So I studied in Crawford College of Art and Design in Cork, did a degree in fine art and graduated in 2016. After graduating, I also started exploring some curatorial projects as part of my practice, which happened in quite like an organic way. But no matter what I was doing, I was kind of mostly excited by working with people I really like collaborating and the things that kind of come from working in different ways with each other. And this is still kind of what forms the basis of my practice and how I work within Muine Bheag Arts. Another big influence on me was my time working with Catalyst Arts in Belfast. I started working there in 2018. Catalyst Arts is an artist-led organisation, and it's run by a voluntary board of directors who each work for a period of 2 years with the organisation. I learned so much from my time working here about running an arts organisation. The way the board is set up is non-hierarchical. So that means that everyone is kind of doing a bit of everything. Again, I really enjoy just working as part of a team and making, interesting or unexpected things happen as a result of us kind of working together. I gained more confidence in things like applying to funding and managing budgets, working with artists, all the kind of things that happen behind the scenes in an art organisation. So yeah, this had a big impact on me and definitely contributed to us setting up Muine Bheag Arts. I'm from Tipperary, so I'm also from the countryside, and that means that growing up I always had an awareness of the lack of arts infrastructure that was happening outside of like the cities, but also like the stuff that was happening in the countryside and the creative potential. I also lived in the Netherlands for a year, and when I came home, like Mark, I had this renewed interest in the things that were happening locally. So we both want to work in a way that feels authentic to the rural spaces that we grew up in, working closely with the local community and creating meaningful encounters with art. So just moving on to how we started. So once we then had the seed of an idea and we had decided that we wanted to do something together, although we were maybe not sure exactly what format that would take, we applied for funding from Creative Ireland Carlow in 2020. This funding was successful and it went towards our first programme in 2021. So once we had this initial funding confirmed, we could go ahead and kind of formalise the organisation and start making some plans for the future. One of the first things we did was to set up as a company limited by guarantee. We opened a bank account, we set up a website, social media accounts, all of the kind of admin that happens behind the scenes. It was just me and Mark working on this together, always kind of learning as we went along. Then we started planning towards our first programme, Grassroots, which, as I mentioned, took place in 2021 during the summer. When we were deciding on a title, we wanted something that would represent the DIY ethos of the organisation, as well as bringing to mind the rural context in which we are working. We decided to call the programme Grassroots. Grassroots for us refers to the act of self-organising, nurturing ideas and facilitating dialogue on a local level. The programme embeds itself into the soil of the community and cultivates growth from the roots up. There have been 2 editions of the Grassroots programme so far. Each year we invite artists to respond to Muine Bheag, to the town in some way. As much as possible, we facilitate artists to spend time with us in the town through site visits or through residencies, or we work with artists from the area. So it's very much rooted in this place.
Our first program launched into July 2021, and it was a 4-week public program. It included artists Bog Cottage, Siveen Gibson, Carl Giffney, Mary O'Leary, Nollaig Malloy, Rory Mullen, Cleena Timoni, and Katie Watchorn. It was our first year, so we were very much lucky to have so many great artists to work with us and trust us and be so generous with their ideas. Many of them spent time with us in Muine Bheag and got to know the area, which was really great. And we worked with each of the individual artists to develop a new commission for the programme. Some created public sculptures or interventions, and others hosted one-off events. The sculptures were located in public spaces around the town and accompanied by a map to guide visitors to the works. And the events included a performance, a film screening, a nature walk, and a pop-up culinary event. I think the response from the local community was really great, and it was an ongoing process of negotiation while we were working out spaces and logistics. I think everyone was very supportive and helpful along the way, and it's very rewarding to see people attending events and engaging with the work.
So just to mention a couple of projects from that programme in more detail. One of the artists we worked with was Nollaig Malloy, and Nollaig presented a film screening event called A Meeting in Muine Bheag Community Centre. So Nollaig often works with archives within her practice, and she was interested in Carlow's industrial history, particularly the Irish sugar industry and its importance in Carlow. So in Carlow County Library, Nollaig found this unofficial archive from the sugar factory, which had never really been formally categorised. It was just lots of boxes containing photos and documents. So we spent time together rummaging through these boxes and finding all this amazing documentation from the sugar factory in Carlow, which maybe hadn't really been seen before or seen for a very long time. So Nollaig went on to present some of these images and her research as part of the film screening, alongside works by Michelle Horrigan and Joan Ross. Their works too commented on industry and landscape. The event took place in the community centre, and it was a really nice way to engage with the local area. There's a lot of interest, around the sugar factory, as so many people would have worked there or had family members work there. So there was a really nice response locally. Following on from that, Nollaig went on to develop a publication with a Skeeton contemporary called A Confection of Photographs. This is a continuation of her work with the Sugar Factory Archives. And for us, it was so nice to see this tangible outcome and have these images and documents preserved in this way through the publication. Also because the Skeeton Contemporary is such a great organisation and a big inspiration for us. So I guess it's really nice to see where the work can go afterwards and what connections can be made during the programme.
The next project we are going to mention is Viewing Platform, which was a mobile sculpture by artist Carl Giffney. Carl built a wooden structure with a ladder on top of his van, and people were invited to climb up and experience a different view of the town from this height. The mobile sculpture travelled to various locations in the town during the programme, including the swimming pool, community centre, the park, and the market square in the centre of the town. It was also present at the launch event, and I think it was a good way to let people know that something was going on in the area. And I think it was quite mad to see this van travelling around with this structure on top. So it was quite strange and attracted a lot of attention. And I think it was a good conversation starter. And facilitated some really nice interactions with Carl and members of the community. Rory Mullen developed a public sculpture and performance as part of the first edition of Grassroots, titled Hee Haw Said the Donkey. The sculpture was a large portrait of Lord Walter Bagnall, who founded the town in the 1600s. And Rory made this in plywood and cut it out, and this was situated across the river on the banks of the Barrow. And along with this sculpture, Rory presented a live performance in which he gave a fictional guided tour of the town titled The Unseen Histories of Muine Bheag. This was accompanied by a pamphlet with drawings by Rory and a text from the performance. I think there was a great response to the performance, and we've had some great conversations with people over the programme about Rory's sculpture across the river. Here is an audio excerpt from this work.
We now come to a relatively new feature of the town, the so-called Willow Horse. This was installed under the auspices of being a new work of public art to brighten up this roundabout, using natural materials to make the form of a lovely friendly horse. Unfortunately, this horse is not what it seems. I can reveal to you today that this horse was installed by Garda Síochána as part of their new rural surveillance scheme. A member of the police force is installed in this horse each morning, only late at night when the coast is clear do they disentangle themselves. From information I have gained, it is quite comfortable in the horse. There's a kettle, a resting zone and a smoking area. The mysterious water feature here was installed not long after and obviously serves as a latrine for the trapped Gardas. The Garda position themselves as such. And this is another example of resting swans, never to be trusted. Thank you for laughing. The police are looking mainly for speeding, suspicious activity, bad attitudes, spitting and dropping litter. The Garda press office has refused to comment on the information presented to them, which I think you'll agree speaks volumes. In future, I would recommend to be extremely suspicious of any public sculpture, as most are built by agents of evil for sinister purposes. Here are a few examples of the real uses of some of this land's most well-loved public artworks. The Ball in Naas, County Kildare, was built in the 1970s to house a secret Garda-only roller disco, which is now disused. Big Jim Larkin's statue in Dublin city centre was built to house aerials for the Garda surveillance drones, thus the dramatic pose. The head of Luke Kelly sculpture is a kennel for sniffer dogs. Molly Malone has cameras and a weed detector fitted so anyone puffing on a joint nearby will soon be nabbed. Be vigilant. Thank you.
So yeah, just moving on from that to mention our engagement program Backlóga. So some of the feedback following this first program was that people in the town wanted to see some creative activities happening specifically for children in the area. So we kind of took this on board and applied for funding from Carlow County Council through their community grant scheme, and approached the local school Queen of the Universe about working together. They were really open and happy to be involved, and we received some funding and ran a pilot engagement program which we called Backlóga, which is Irish for buds. This took place in May 2022. We ran a series of workshops with the 6th class students from Queen of the Universe, facilitated by the artist Gemma Crow. Gemma is an artist and illustrator and also has a background in youth work. She uses Irish language quite a lot in her work too, which was really nice. So the workshops included zine making, we did collaborative drawings, we were collecting found materials from nature and using those to make sculptures and drawings. which was really nice, and the children really enjoyed it too. This is something that we hopefully can continue and make bigger, and I think it's really important, and it's nice to engage with young people specifically in the town. It's so important for them too to have access to art at an early age. I'm going to just move on to our second edition of Grassroots, which took place in August 2022. Again, the programme included a series of interventions, and everything was taking place in the public spaces around the town. It also ran for 4 weeks. It brought together contributions from Marion Balfe, Angela Birchall, Colm Keady Tabal, Gemma Kearney, Niall McCallum, Cillian Moynihan and Quantum Foam. Similarly to the first year, the artists were all invited to respond to Muine Bheag and spend time in the town, engaging with different aspects of the town's history, infrastructure and community. The programme included a series of public sculptures, a guided tour, a performance and a tufting workshop in the community centre. So we don't work from a fixed space, so everything we do takes place in the public realm. One of these events took place along the River Barrow. It was a performance by Quantum Foam. So for this performance, we worked with the local community boat, Bod Keppel. The performance was called Descent of Waves. Bod Keppel operates tours along the River Barrow during the summer. So we approached them about the performance taking place on board the boat. So it was an audio performance, and Quantum Foam was responding to the environmental sounds of the river. The audience then could join on board the boat and also gathered along the banks of the river. And it turned out to be this really lovely, immersive, communal listening experience, which kind of echoed out across the banks of the river.
The artist Niall McCallum created a work called New Versailles Turning Over and Over. This was an earthwork that was located in a field in the town close to the river. Niall did a lot of research on the history of the town and was very much interested in the unusual links between Muine Bheag and Versailles. It was said that Walter Bagnall planned to model the town after Versailles, but his plans were not realised when transport links were diverted away from Muine Bheag. The courthouse is all that remains from these plans, which is still there today, and it's now the library, and Niall referenced this in the work. He also used the book A Step in Time by local historian Miles Kavanagh as part of his research. The labyrinth in Versailles inspired the idea of creating this labyrinth structure, and Niall was working directly with the land to create the work. There was a fountain at the end of the labyrinth which referenced the fountain in Versailles, and this was activated depending on the weather conditions. Visitors walked through the labyrinth in a repetitive way, I think in response to the layout that Niall had made, and following this path and coming across sculptures along the way that referenced Niall's research. So generally, as we are developing our program, it's important to us to use existing spaces and facilities available in the town. The launch of Grassroots has taken place in the local pub, Phelan's, for the last 2 years, And we've also hosted events in the Muine Bheag Community Centre, the green space outside it, and at St. Andrew's Church, the train station, as well as in fields, laneways, and along the river bank. I think these spaces are familiar and welcoming, and I think people just it's nice that people happen across the work, and when you're working in public spaces, you're naturally meeting people, and it opens up a space for conversation. You get to hear people talk about their response to the work, and we chat about things that come from the work. And this happens through also going door to door with leaflets, hanging up posters. So there's always ongoing conversations and negotiations, and when we're out meeting people all the time, which I think is really good to have that relationship. And I think this is partly to do with the works being in such a public manner. Collaboration is central to what we do, and there are so many people helping out behind the scenes to make these things happen. And one of our main collaborators is Paddy Gardner from Bagmastan Improvement Group, and Paddy is such an important part of what we do. He has lots of local networks and has such a great community spirit. So I think it would be very difficult, if not impossible, for us to do it without him. For me, it's a great way of getting to know new people and learn about my community. And we found that people have been very open and supportive the last 2 years, so we're very grateful for that.
So just to maybe finish up thinking about what can happen in the future and what we're doing next. Of course, we're still very much in the early stages of the organisation, so we're looking forward to seeing where things will go. One of our main priorities is to continue to build those really important relationships and networks within the community and become an important part of the town. We also want to provide a platform for artists to experiment and to take risks and enable them to make work that maybe they wouldn't have the chance to make in a gallery setting. That's really, really important to us. This sense of experimentation can also extend to the organisational structure and our programming. So going forward, we hope to be fluid and adaptable and remain flexible in terms of our schedule and scale and format of different projects. We're not particularly interested in becoming huge or much bigger as an organisation, but more so we want to emphasise becoming sustainable and working in a kind of slow and consistent way that allows us to work for a long time in Muine Bheag. We look forward to the third edition of Grassroots, which is going to take place in 2023. So that's what we're working on next. So if you haven't had a chance to visit us already, hopefully you might get to do so next summer. Also good to note that Muine Bheag is on the train line, so it's very easy to get to us from Dublin. It's just about an hour. So hopefully we can see you in the near future. So just want to say thanks again to Basic Space and to the Hugh Gallery. Goodbye and thank you.